Well, hey there. How are you guys doing? So, I was having some technical difficulties. So, I'm using my headphone mic that I usually use for one on ones. And it's probably a better way for you to hear me. I don't look as special because I've got this headphone on, but that doesn't matter because the whole goal of all of this um, is that we just want to make sure I've got the right one up. Okay, good. Um, is that we have this time together every Monday to kind of just talk through like just to talk through things that are part of our lives and that we deal with on a daily basis. And so my mission and my passion and my hope is that I can share some of my life experience, and it may translate for you, but I always want to emphasize, if it resonates, great. If it doesn't, toss it because I'm not you, I'm me. And we can all learn how to be our best selves when life is messy. I call this Let's Get Real Together because real life is hard. Like, having a conversation last night with some family members, and it was just like an awareness that, everyone is struggling with something. And because we all know that life is going to be hard, why is it that we're surprised when it happens? And what happens often is we kind of become um, ruled by our reactions to challenges. So that's what I want to talk about today is reacting. And I want to send props to my good friend Sandy for giving me this topic because um, she shared something about reacting, and I was just like, that is so true with regard to what we talked about last week. Last week, we talked about overfunctioning and underfunctioning. And I don't know if you kind of thought more about where you are with regard to that, um, whether you're an overfunctioner or an underfunctioner. But I encourage you to go take a look at the video again. It stays on the group page. And I also want to encourage you to invite your friends who you think friends or family members who would benefit from the content that's on this group. This is intended to be a safe place. I do moderate it very closely. My passion is that it be a community of connection and love and light and truth. So, love and light is great, but if you don't have truth, self self truth, integrity, then what love and light are you really giving people? It would only just be another mask that we put on to show the world that we are something. So there's always a deep connection between love and light, serving, connecting, speaking truth, um, but always with compassion and empathy. I can't emphasize that enough. There is no place for finger pointing. We're all human. We all need and deserve compassion and empathy. But we can be truthful. We can practice honesty. Honesty with ourselves is number one. And yes, honesty with those that we love, asking for what we need, setting boundaries, saying no, doing all those things that are just really, really uncomfortable. But let us not dwell there. Let us jump into um, our presentation today. Okay, so make sure I got my cursor here. See my little cursor? So we're going to talk about reacting. Okay. Um, so here we go. So just to remind you, there's three perspectives that I tend to work with folks. There's the looking perspective slash pathway slash phase. I use words interchangeably. Then there's leaning and there's living. In looking, the three kind of ideals or Attributes, really. Attributes is in the looking phase, there's curiosity. There is a, a desire or an interest in self awareness. So you're becoming aware of your feelings, you're becoming aware of your reactions in this context. And you're also observing. You're in a place of witnessing or observing yourself when things get ouchy, difficult, or hard. The leaning phase, there is a desire for more self reflection. So you're not just curious anymore. You've gone beyond curious. You're kind of like, you're really kind of interviewing yourself in a sense, questioning yourself, questioning your reactions, questioning, maybe you observe that, you know, you handled a situation from a place of people pleasing instead of integrity. So, people pleasing means we do things that we don't want to do so other people are happy. Integrity says we do things that we want to do and speak our truth kindly, right? That way we're integrated. Our outsides match our insides. When we're people pleasing, most of the time our outsides do not match our insides. And then things like resentment and frustration start happening. Okay. So, leaning, sorry, I went off on a little trip. I'm coming back. So, a desire for more self reflection. Okay. Um, so you're beyond curiosity. You're also studying new material. So the fact that you're even in this group watching this video means you probably are looking and leaning, like you're kind of in the middle because you're looking and studying new material. You have gone out and you have found a book, you have found a workbook, you have found a group of people with a like-minded interest in self awareness and self discovery. You have really, and you're doing it. You're putting pen to paper. So you're in the leaning phase. There's also new practices. You're trying on new things: meditation, yoga, journaling, riding a bike, doing a new exercise routine, things that are helping you begin to feel empowered and feel good. So those are new practices you're taking on. So that kind of is an indication that you're in the leaning phase. Then the last phase, or pathway or perspective, many different ways I use this. I probably need to be a little bit more intentional with what I call it, but it's really they're phases because it's circular, it's a spiral, it's not linear. So in the living phase, daily rituals and practices. So there are parts of things that you do that are going to be a daily ritual that are part of who you are. Um, it is like breathing. Okay. So one of the first things I do for my daily rituals is when I wake up in the morning, the very first emotion I feel in my body is fear. The first one. Eyes open, fear. I've had this all my life. When's the other shoe going to drop? When's this going to happen? I start living in the future. I start thinking about all the stuff that's going to go wrong today. I start worrying about what I have to do. And so fear builds up. My nervous system is like lit up, is like a warning sign. It's like red lights are beeping. And what do? I breathe. Sounds simple, I know, but breath work is something I'm really practicing. And when I breathe big belly breaths, I help stabilize my nervous system that thinks we're in danger, when really it's just my mind is in the future trying to control something I can't control anyway. Okay. So that's a daily ritual for me. It's just something I know about myself. And I know I'm going to wake up and I'm knowing that I'm going to feel fear. And then how do I respond? Not react, but respond. Also, with living, it's accountability and support. So I can't emphasize this enough. This journey that we're all on cannot be done in isolation. It's just some of it can, but there is accountability and support. We're human, we are made for connection. So it's important for us to be able to communicate in safe environments about what we're feeling and what we're thinking, what we're experiencing. And also, the last thing is awareness that growth is a lifelong process. This is a spiral. This is not a linear destination. This is not the 12 steps. Um, So I've done some work in recovery groups for codependency, and one of the things you find is that the 12 steps of AA, which is aligned quite well with the 12 steps for folks who are codependent, it's not like you get to the 12th step and you get the gold star and you're done. It's a constantly going 1 through 4 and then going to 7 and then going back to 2 with regard to certain areas in your life. So you're like an onion, and every time you peel back a layer, there's fresh stuff that needs to be worked on. Okay, so we have patterned ways of responding, okay, and reacting. So last week we talked about we have patterned ways of responding to ouchy difficult situations. And when we take a step back and look at ourselves with curiosity, not with self-judgment, not with loathing, not with I can't believe I did it that way, not with any of that. When we recollect moments where we reacted, the first thing we tend to do is judge ourselves. I know I do. Or I feel sorry for myself because I was like, I was so overwhelmed and I just didn't know what to do. And, oh well, what's the point? That whole victim mode thing. We have patterned ways of reacting, and it's up to us to be willing to take a step back and look at ourselves with curiosity. So there's two key things are occurring here. This go much more in depth with this, but this is just surface. So two important things are happening here. Number one, our brain is lazy. I'm going to say this again. Our brain is lazy. So the way our brain works is there are patterned, they're interstates that have been in our brain since we were born. And things shaped those roadways, traumatic experiences, our childhood, how we were nurtured, what it was like in school, what kind of friendships we had, you name it. Okay. So those interstates were paved and repaved. And so there's pathways that are well worn in our brains with regard to how we respond when we don't feel safe. When we don't feel safe, when we feel like we are in danger, our brain has well hewn pathways that it lights up. Okay. So, in difficult, ouchy, challenging situations where reaction is most likely, two things are happening here. Our brains are firing up. Danger, danger, danger. I want you to see red lights and flags. Red flags, lights beeping, bad, bad, bad stuff. Then our nervous system engages. Now, if you remember a few weeks back, I talked about the polyvagal theory, which is the vagus nerve that is connected to every part of our body, from our brain all the way down our back. And it's kind of like a spider web of nerves. And so our nervous system is very sensitive. And when we have experienced trauma or we have emotional wounding or any kind of developmental trauma that just happens with living life, it fires up and it goes into, okay, what do I need to do? Now, if you remember the nervous system, the polyvagal, so you have the ladder, the top of the ladder is where you feel the most social and engaged and open and curious, like the looking phase, open, flexible. The middle is I need to do something right now, like I need to act. Action, action, action. And that's when you can't turn your brain off. And there's a lot of future thinking and a lot of past judging. Okay. And then the bottom of the ladder, if you recall, is freezing, shutting down. Okay, so I want you to keep all that in mind. But essentially, the nervous system is like, okay, there's danger. We need to do something. How are we going to respond? Because it's going to engage everything as the brain releases all these chemicals. The chemicals are the messengers to the nerves. So those two are very connected. So those are the two things that are happening. Now I want you to remember there's a line, and it's just a visual for me that helps me remember where I want to be, where I would like to be. So this line represents what is really happening in any given situation. Okay, that's reality. So much when we stay in our head, we are living either in the future or the past, very rarely in the present. So this line represents the present, what is really happening in the moment, in any given situation. Okay? So, we tend to have folks in hard, ouchy, difficult situations where who might overreact. Okay? Overreacting. Then we have folks who underreact. So remember, there's the line in the middle. There's this place where whatever is really happening, and it's a place of responding. It's a place of being open and available. We feel safe in that environment. So that line is there all the time. Okay, it's the line of feeling good. It's the line of, okay, I'm doing all right. But because life happens and because our nervous system has turned on and our brain is turned on, we have patterned ways of reacting. And so some of us are overreactors and some of us are underreactors. Okay, so overreacting. So this is kind of this is just a snapshot. There's a strong need to resolve it right now. Okay, so I'm an overreactor. So when there is danger or a problem, for example, with my husband. So think about a person in your life, boyfriend, partner, husband, wife. So someone that you deeply care for, and there is a conflict that arises. And let's say there's a situation and you're feeling this difficult, ouchy, yucky, ugh place, and you want to resolve it right now. In other words, this person has something has happened. This person has either hurt you or said something. You're feeling defensive. You're feeling like you're in danger. I want you to consider right then and there that you are now no longer in the present. Your brain has taken you to some place that indicates you might be eaten by a lion, and your nervous system has engaged and said, well, we need to do something about that. And either we're going to freeze or we're going to start talking 100 miles an hour or whatever, but we're definitely not in the open and curious social top of the ladder for the nervous system, right? We're in the middle or on the bottom. So with overreacting, there's a strong, strong need to resolve it right now. You are not going to wait for the other person to think. You need this solved now because you believe your life is in danger. You physically feel nauseous, your heart rate goes up, and you're not breathing fully. You're doing short breaths and you may even be holding your breath. Okay? There's a strong need to fix it now. And I mean instantaneously. There's a tendency to talk a lot with a lot of strong, powerful feelings. So, abandonment is a big one. So, in our intimate relationships, if you had any emotional wounding with abandonment in your childhood, where you did not get emotionally nurtured or fulfilled by a parent, particularly, there may be some wounding from abandonment. And when our intimate partner that we love seems to get mad at us, our nervous system may respond to that as danger, abandonment, and we are triggered by a developmental need for nurturing that we did not receive as a child. And we see our brain, our nervous system perceives that as abandonment. So we feel very powerful feelings that are associated with abandonment. A lot of uh, crying, anger, just terror, really. Um, so and then there's this, you're driven to want to resolve it now, and you're going to talk a lot. You're going to want to try to fix it. You're going to want to try to, you may even try to persuade the person that everything's fine, that they're not mad. A lot of times gaslighting happens in this environment. We're not even aware of it. We're trying to convince the other person they're not feeling what they're feeling because it feels very dangerous to us. And that doesn't mean we're wrong or bad. It just means this is something for us to look at and be honest with ourselves. Okay. And what happens on the inside is what's really happening on the inside in a lot of the cases with overreacting is on the inside, there's feelings of fear or anxiety if the problem isn't resolved immediately. And that is usually associated with a desire or a need to not be abandoned, to be acknowledged, to be left, or to be understood or to be heard. So we feel like when if this person isn't able to hear me right now, then the problem's then it's over. So it's a lot of grandiose thinking, and when we overreact, everything is lit up. I mean, everything is lit up. There's a lot of powerful emotions and a lot of talking. And I can tell you right now, for folks who are not overreactors, it is completely intimidating to be in the room with a person who is overreacting, um, because it looks scary to a person who is a underreactor. So underreacting is very similar to underfunctioning. There's a strong feeling to get away, you know, just to agree, acknowledge, and get away. What is interesting is when an overreactor who has childhood wounds of abandonment, emotional wounding, and this doesn't mean that your parents like left you on a street, corner or whatever. It just you experienced it that way. So trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter if the person intended it or not. Your body experienced it as emotional trauma. So when you're triggered abandonment issues are triggered and you're trying to fix the problem and you're feeling scared and insecure and vulnerable and your intimate partner is an underreactor, they want to get away. So the fact that they actually want to leave the room triggers your abandonment issues even more. Okay, so it's very interesting how our bodies are programmed to help us heal by putting us in partnership with people who trigger those wounds. And that doesn't mean it's wrong. It's actually the goal is to heal those wounds for ourselves. So underreacting is a strong feeling to get away. On the inside, there's feelings of insecurity or fear, which often may cause you to shut down or freeze. So you want to avoid, you want to shut down. You, your nervous system is completely overwhelmed, and you're in the bottom of the ladder. It's overwhelming, it's confusing, and you don't want to deal with the situation. Often you're uncomfortable with talking or unable to talk. So um, overreactors tend to be talkers, like overfunctioners, but I tend to want to resolve it now. Very strong need to do that. And my husband tends to be, an underreactor. So he learned and coped with dealing with difficult, ouchy situations by withdrawing. Okay, it doesn't mean it's not bad. It's not bad or good. It just is what it is. So that's just how he copes. So um, when I want to talk to him, his response is like, "Go away. I need to go over here. This is really uncomfortable and I don't want to talk about it." I don't know how many times my husband has said, "I don't want to talk about it." His first reaction is, "I don't want to talk about it," because it's too close, it's too personal, it's too vulnerable. Um, but we have hence, learned and understood one another well enough that we are able to move past that usually to a safer place for both of us. But it requires me, the overfunctioner, to back off and allow space. So let's talk about how we can manage these reactions when we're in either overreacting or we're underreacting. So I want you to let's start looking into it. Let's start really kind of leaning in. So recall a recent situation when things got hard or ouchy or difficult. I want you to think about this, and this is going to go up on the group, but I really invite you to spend some time writing it down on paper, or just sitting in stillness and reflecting on it, or maybe when you're exercising today or taking a walk. Think about, okay, when I'm in a situation, what do I tend to do? And what do I feel in my body and where? And what do I feel emotionally? Do I feel anger? Do I feel fear? Do I feel frustration? And don't just stay at the surface emotions. Think deeper. So you can Google emotional wheel and it's going to show you the millions of emotions that we actually have, but we tend to use words like sad, happy, mad. There's more going on there that are associated with those feelings. Okay. And I'll post an emotional wheel. I'll do that. I'll post an emotional wheel today. So you can kind of talk about them. Let's uh, just to provide some vocabulary for you. Okay. For emotions, because we all need it, because it's easy for us to not think about those things if we don't know what the words are. So sometimes we see the word on paper, we're like, oh, I was saying I was mad, but really I was resentful, you know? So, underreacting, same situation. Recall a recent situation when things got hard. What did you feel in your body and where? And what did you feel emotionally? Okay. Now, here's another one. How did your family of origin react in hard, ouchy, difficult situations? Okay. So, my family in hard, ouchy, difficult situations um, did one of two things. Either it became like a huge dramatic thing where everybody was in the room and everybody was picking up on everybody else's emotions. So there was no emotional boundaries. And then there was this sense of judgment of the situation, of the people who had caused the problem. So let's talk about the people. Let's talk about them. They're the issue. We're great. They're the problem. Okay. Or if it was about us, if there was something, a mistake was made, or something happened within the family unit that was private, or we just didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about it. If it was about other people, we had no problem talking about it. But if it was about like our internal family stuff, no, we didn't talk about it. So I tend to overreact. Why? Because bad, yucky situation happens as a kid, kids naturally respond and they ask questions and they feel feelings and they cry. And that makes the adults in their life uncomfortable, especially if those parents or caregivers or grandparents aren't comfortable with their emotions. They do not have emotional intelligence and they were not able to adequately respond to that emotional need, and they were overwhelmed themselves. Doesn't mean they were bad or good. It just is what it is. So, um, I overreact because my emotions tended to be ignored. Heather, go away. You need to take all those emotions away. And what's interesting is I also translated that to my own children when they were little because I was not fully conscious of my lack of emotional intelligence. Okay. Okay, I was just looking at my watch so we know what's going on. Okay. I gotta keep on track because I can talk. I'm an overfunctioner. Go figure. And an extrovert. So, how did your family of origin react in hard, ouchy, difficult situations? This part will take time, and it will likely pinpoint some discomfort for you. Remember, discomfort isn't bad; it's your friend, but it doesn't need to rule you. Okay? So, discomfort is our body's way of saying, "Hey, this is a situation we'd like to deal with, but we can handle it. We can manage it. We don't need to let it consume us." And go into shutdown or go into, running around and trying to do 12,000 things to make ourselves feel better. There's a balanced way that we can learn to respond. This is a big one. What messages did you hear about how to respond to anger, frustration, or arguments? So there was messaging in your home when you were a child on when difficult, hard things happened. What messages did you hear from the people who were taking care of you about how the family responded to those situations? Okay, it's a big one. All right, so here's some tools. Overreacting. Here's ways we can move back into the line of real life. Remember, the line of real life is not saying that's just the line, it's a little tiny line. Nobody's ever going to fit there. It's just we're all kind of working towards that line of feeling good, a line of, okay, we feel balanced, we feel supported, we know the earth underneath our feet is holding us up, we are not in danger, we feel secure, we feel safe. So, ways to move back into that openness, that flexibility, breathing, keeping our heart rate low, not engaging, allowing our nervous system to come back online. There's no lion going to eat us. In the moment, when the overreaction feelings begin, do not talk at the person. This is really hard. Everything in your body is going to want you to say it right now. everything. You're going to want to do whatever it takes to fix the issue. At the person is key. When you're in overreaction, it is very rarely about what the person did. It has more to do with your emotional and trauma wounding, not the person in front of you. It's hard to understand, but that's actually what's happening. So your emotions are triggered. You're triggered because of an emotional wound or a trauma wound in your past. And that person that you love, that you care for, triggered it unknowingly, unconsciously. Wasn't done on purpose. Yes, sometimes in our life there are people who do things that hurt us intentionally, but if you're in a relationship with someone and they have, said something and you got defensive, that defensiveness is on me. They didn't cause it. I'm defensive for some other reason related to that behavior or whatever caused that trigger to be triggered. Also, be still for 5 minutes. So I practice this all the time. Last night, for example, difficult conversation, and I had to sit still for I sat still for 5 minutes and I didn't talk. So my husband's right next to me and I don't talk because he needs to process a little bit longer than I do. And he also needs to have space to just kind of absorb it all and think about it all. And I need to calm my nervous system down so I don't come across like I'm trying to make him change the way he feels about something if we disagree. So I don't talk at him and I have to sit still for 5 minutes approximately. I don't time myself, but it's just a general sit still and don't talk at him. I have to take 5 seconds and breathe slowly through my nose. So that was supposed to come first. So I don't know why my thing's out of order. But the first thing you do is take 5 seconds and breathe through your nose. Not deep breaths. You don't want to go, right? Because that triggers other chemicals. So you want to breathe through your nose 4 seconds, breathe out 4 seconds or 6 seconds, and do that a couple of times. As you're doing that, you go and kind of go into this. I'm gonna get still for 5 minutes. You continue that breathing, belly breathing. You don't talk at the person. You got to do everything you can to turn your mouth off. And it's very hard. And identify what triggered your reaction. So in the moment that I'm sitting still, I'm going, okay. I'm interrogating myself. I'm essentially going, okay, Heather, why did that, why is that triggering you? And I think about it, and what it does is it allows me to step away from the situation from a place of observing. So in that moment, yeah, I'm going back to the looking phase because the looking phase is saying, here's this new issue. We're having this new challenge. What do I see here that separates me from the emotion, from the fear, the overreacting? I step away. I wonder why I'm reacting like this. And what that does is it allows the nervous system to calm down. And the brain is still going to keep going because that's what the brain does. But the nervous system starts to calm down and we start climbing the ladder again. Remember the ladder? Start climbing that ladder. So identifying what triggered your reaction is really key. Underreacting. If you're an underreactor, these are the ways. So stay still and ask for a few minutes to process. Now, this is really surprising how often underreactors don't know how to ask for space. They just want to leave. And the other person just feels like you're abandoning, right? So the overreactor in your life is going to want to resolve the situation right now. And if you just like, I'm out, get up and leave, well, how are they going to experience that? Not good. So stay still, stay in the room, be present, and ask for a few minutes to process, especially if the overreactor in your life is trying to talk to you at 100 miles an hour with lots of intense emotions. Ask for what you need. Ask for a few minutes to process. And also be very specific. Communicate you want to resolve it. Remember, the overreactor is all about resolving it now. They are terrified. I am terrified that we're not going to resolve this issue and something horrible is going to happen. And underreactors, you guys are feeling things very intensely, but it's just a different kind of communication. So the withdrawal is because there's just a lot of emotion, it's a lot of overwhelm. But if all you can do is just say, "Hey, I want to resolve this. I just need a few minutes." And the overreactor may not like that, but at least they're hearing you say, "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I want to resolve this." And then this is critical to identify what triggered you and what you're feeling. So underreactors tend to want to turn their feelings off. Overreactors tend to be very expressive of our feelings and very dramatic, very, grandiose. Underreactors tend to be like, I'm good, or I'm fine, or, you know, really challenge yourself to identify what triggered you and why you wanted to run away, why you wanted to withdraw, and what are you feeling in that moment? What are you really feeling? So this is awareness in action. We can see ourselves clearly and we can try new things. Remember, we are human. We are all move in and out of all these phases all the time. Be kind to yourself and trust the process. Okay, so that's it. Hold on. Ooh, ooh, trying to get over here. Okay. Um, Technology. God love it. So that's pretty much it for today. But I hope that's helpful. I will post the emotional wheel later today. Also, I am in the process of creating a new, um, um, well, considering researching a new product potentially for feeling good. And I have talked to some of you already about that, and I appreciate your input. But I will be posting something later on next week, asking for folks if they want to, if they're willing to have a quick conversation with me about feeling good and how and the desire to feel good and the boundaries and obstacles that can come in the way of feeling good. And that's something I'm working on. So I may reach out to some of you, and I appreciate those who have already helped me kind of refine what it looks like to feel good in our lives and how we can do that and how we can do that from a place of reality, from the line of reality, from being real and open with our feelings, asking for what we need, practicing boundaries, um, emotional intelligence, all of it, the gamut. But this product is kind of a little specific um, specific topic of feeling good. It's something I'm researching in my work. So um, I might be asking some of you for some input. So I'd appreciate it if you wanna help me. That'd be awesome. It's always good. Okay, I got to get going. I hope you have a good week, and I will see you next Monday. Again, if you have any questions, always feel free to DM me in the group, and I will respond to you when I can. All right. I think that's it. So have a good day, and I will see you soon. Okay. Bye.